am so honored and excited to have April Moss on Light in the D. And I'm going to tell you, this is a little bit different of an episode, at least going forward. We're gonna get into some truth telling here and share some real stories of what's happening here in America. And I want to talk to April about her experience having been a CBS weather reporter here in the Detroit area. And what she's doing now as an independent journalist and what led to that. So April, thank you so much for being on Light in the D.
Thank you so much for the invite, John. It's just a pleasure to be here with you today and to speak to your audience. Thank you.
No, thank you. So here we are. It is September 2021. Who would have thought we would be in this state in the country 2 years ago? So I want to go back to, was it you were a CBS weather reporter for how long?
So I was a meteorologist for 9 years at CBS Detroit, and I also had the privilege of hosting a community show that over the years the name changed, but it airs on the weekends. It was called Street Beat, and then it's now newly called Community Connect, and it's basically just a lighthearted program to kind of shed the light on some of the good things that are happening across Detroit, and really mostly putting a spotlight on nonprofit organizations and what they're doing to really bless the people of Detroit. And I enjoyed my time there, even knowing that as a Christian and a conservative in media, it's not something, well, for me, I don't really care what people think. So I never felt like I needed to hide who I was, although I was very much aware that there was very few people who shared my same beliefs that I got the opportunity to work with. The majority, didn't think the same way that I did. So, that created a little bit of an isolation just for me, because I'm sure, as you know, as well, like when you have that perfect partnership, where you're able to work in an environment where you enjoy the people you work with. And for the most part, I surely did, but, it's no secret that the majority of anybody working in mainstream media, they're liberal or they voted for a Democratic, candidate for president or whatever. So, that was just my experience over the last 9 years. I was part-time at CBS because it was really important to my husband and I to raise our 4 sons and put the emphasis on being intentional about our parenting. So I will say that we sacrificed financially over the last, 15 years raising them by living on a very meager salary, as a part-time person, so that I could be home with my kids Monday through Friday and really make sure that we were instilling godly values and discipleship, which is, I think, the reason why it allowed me to really wake up quickly when this pandemic hit, because I wasn't absorbing a lot of mainstream media content. I did have that spirit of truth within me to help me discern things. And so, John, really, I think that as a Christian working in media, it's difficult because a lot of the content that's being put out there, so much of it is negative and at this point satanic. There's so much stuff right now that is so against our biblical values that there was really no reason for me to live we've never been the type of family who has been the family to sit around, on the couch and like watch a favorite show, on mainstream media. We've just always, kind of been different in that way.
So what happened in your job? So you said you woke up when about, you were really aware of what was going on and how it impacted you to a point where it's like, okay, I can't keep my mouth shut. I can't keep quiet. So where did that begin?
Yeah, well, so this is really interesting. Many people don't know this. In March 2020, when the pandemic officially hit. And what I mean by that is when all the schools shut down. It was that, around St. Patrick's Day weekend, right? Of March 2020, when all the schools, the kids were being sent home. Everybody was like, stay home from work. Within that week, I received 2 letters that were sent to me by my work, but they had the seal of the Department of Homeland Security on them. And these letters were written up by the Department of Homeland Security and said that as a media personnel, that I was a essential employee, and that I needed to be able to carry these papers with me wherever I went. And I needed to have multiple copies on me at all times. CBS created a special badge for me that said media with the Department of Homeland Security seal on it. And I was supposed to keep that badge with me. And the letters stated that if I were to be stopped while driving, I needed to be able to have these to show authorities so that I could obtain gasoline to get to my job. And then the second letter stated that the bearer of this letter is entitled to restore communications that have been lost. Those are 2, in my opinion, very serious letters. And to my knowledge, nobody around me that received that letter from my station, which was only probably a handful of us, because at that point they sent everybody home to work from home, except for there was maybe 5 or 6 of us that had to keep the station running. And so I was one of those employees who worked throughout the whole COVID hysteria, fear-mongering pandemic era, when truly we didn't know what this was. And you're just seeing people coming out of morgues and body bags, in New York City. And it was terrifying, to be honest.
Sure.
And I do remember that period where we were all very nervous to go into work, because the media
Sure.
had so built this up to be that, if you get this, you're getting on a ventilator and then you're dying. That was going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And so I clearly remember going into CBS still at work, bringing the hand sanitizer wherever I went and the wipes and all that stuff. And they had us on like alternating schedules. So even though there was 5 or 6 of us allowed in the building, nobody was ever really there at the same time. They had us all staggered on our shifts. So I would go into an empty studio, turn on the lights by myself, turn on my camera by myself. I mean, this was very much like, there was maybe one other person in the building, and they were supposed to stay like on the opposite end of the building. So I lived through that. And I remember asking one of my supervisors about those letters from Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, listen, what is this about? And I was given zero explanation. Like nobody, It was almost like, well, what do you mean? What's the big deal? Like, what are you asking?
Well, you almost sound like a conspiracy theorist asking the question, because it's like, I'm asking the question, it almost seems like it was planned. Like, why would Homeland Security do that? No.
Right. And it terrified me, because I'm thinking, I mean, I gave it to my husband, who was a principal at the time. And I'm like, is this just me? Or is this letter sounds like as if there's not going to be gasoline available for the general public?
Yeah.
As I was reading it, and he's like, no, that's exactly how it's written, is like, like you are allowed to get gasoline because you're an essential media person. So I never got answers from anyone at the station regarding what that was about. That is when, as this is just who I've always been, though, I'm very inquisitive. My parents used to tell me growing up, you're going to be a lawyer one day because you just always need to know every angle. And, I used to, I guess, be not intentionally rebellious, but argumentative to the point of, I just wanted to like understand why there were these rules here and there. And so that's just who I am. And so, so I began to research, and the big thing to me was, okay, I'm watching President Trump's pressers. He was holding pressers every day, pretty much during the pandemic.
Right.
And I'm watching them so that we can get the latest, what's the information coming straight from the administration. And what I was seeing was that President Trump was bringing on multiple doctors, offering clear evidence that this virus was something that can be cured through just, UV light. The virus is dead in 10 seconds. Through natural sunlight, when you go outside, the virus immediately cannot survive. So I thought, okay, I don't have to be afraid to go outside. UV light, I mean, anybody can buy one of those. And if you really wanted to disinfect your house, and then soap and water, and the other therapeutics that were provided to the public. But yet what you only heard from the mainstream media was death, 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 be afraid, be afraid. And so I kept really honestly hoping and waiting for, well, when is somebody from mainstream media going to catch on to all these great things that President Trump's been talking about? I mean, we already had the technology. If you just wanted to talk about sanitization, I mean, we already had, schools and hospitals have already had the technology of, spraying things to immediately kill things that landed on surfaces. There was no need for all of this ridiculousness. And, my husband was, as I said, a principal at the time at a school here locally. And the amount of hoops that the schools were having to jump through to try to meet the criteria that the governor was enforcing. I thought, this is such overkill. I mean, we already know all these facts about this virus. So anyways, the more that I researched, the more that the media was going the opposite direction with truth. And it pained me inside, because I want to be proud of the organization that I went to school for journalism, and I went to school for atmospheric sciences to get my meteorology certification. So, I mean, I love truth and I love learning. And so basically, when this continued to go on for so many months, inside, to be honest, I just was screaming inside and thinking, why on earth are we not giving people accurate information? Right. And why is the constant push for fear? And so, of course, as I continued to research, I realized this was all part of a plan, to have us under lockdowns, not because it was backed by any sort of real science, but that it was backed by a political science agenda, that unfortunately is we're continuing to march right along that path right now with the current administration that is in power.
Yeah. I was thinking about this when I remember probably about April or so. One thing that I noticed, several things I noticed, but little buzzwords that were being used. This is the new normal. Where did that come from?
Right.
This is unprecedented times. Like, the media was parroting all of these things. And it reminded me of, I don't know if Rush Limbaugh used to do this. You'd play these montages of the media parroting all, like they all got the memo. The same thing. And again, sounding like a conspiracy theorist. And I think people's minds are blowing now, going, oh, wow, a lot of these conspiracy theorist type ideas are coming true. It almost seemed like this was planned. It was planned. Well, and there was so much hatred for Trump. Anything he said or did, like talking about hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
And
so here's the thing that I'm not sure if anyone else has spoken about these things on your podcast before, but I'm happy to just continue to speak truth, because I know that it is 100% true. But the thing is that Trump was well loved by everybody in Hollywood and politicians. I mean, he was a well-liked guy prior to him, coming down that escalator as he announced that he was running for president. The minute that happened and he started to go against the agenda of many terms that you'll hear, deep state, ultimately what it is a plan to take over the world, right? By the elites and the globalists. And it sounds crazy, but everybody needs to understand that the reason why, it's so difficult to actually get people to understand that there is no science that backs up what they're doing to people as far as shutting down businesses and mask mandates and forced vaccinations. We've never done these kinds of things before, is because there's that greater planned agenda that was put in the works, decades ago. So once you understand that framework, then, you can see very clearly where this is headed. And I think that's why God is using his kingdom and his people to sound the alarm. I mean, we're supposed to be the watchmen for the world. We're supposed to
Salt and
be,
light.
yep. And we are supposed to be paying attention to what's happening, and staying wise about things so that we're not deceived, because we know that Satan is the great deceiver. He's not going to come out and tell us exactly what he's doing. He's going to do things very subtly and with a lot of mind control techniques, like putting things out there on TV in that, continuous repetitious pattern, like you were saying, to make people think a certain way. And so one of my, things that I thought was so alarming was that people stopped using their critical thinking skills when it came to COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you have to do. If you can watch what's on the news, but if you're not coming at it from the aspect of, this is just one person telling me something, a lot of people have come at it from, well, whatever the TV puts forth is truth. And that's just not true, unfortunately. Gone are the days where you could trust the nightly news anchor. And now we know that because we have these media conglomerations, you have 6 major conglomerations, and they're all in complete agreement with each other, which is why, 20 years ago, a story like mine, rogue meteorologist from CBS, whistleblows her station on live TV. Do you know Fox and NBC and the other stations would have been clamoring to get an interview with me to compete with their CBS channel.
Now they won't touch it, will they?
I heard from nobody except for eventually Fox 2 picked up the story. Huel Perkins actually called me and said, I can't believe we're the first station to actually talk to you. And I told him, well, Huel, that is why we're in such the problem we're in right now in journalism, is that, unfortunately, when you have so many people in an organization that are one-way thinkers, they're not realizing that, there's no objectivity there.
Yeah.
So I will say that when I was at CBS, I tried my best to point out when the content that I was responsible for putting out there, as far as being a host for the show, when I felt like it was swaying way too far left. And I mean, all I wanted was to stay objective. I wasn't trying to impart my own opinions or anything like that. I just simply wanted us to have objectivity. Yeah. And the problem is, though, that all of these media conglomerates are sending down the orders from the top. And I'm not talking about the CEOs. I'm talking about the people who actually own these conglomerations. Like General Electric actually owns 70% of media worldwide today.
Wow.
So the decisions that are being made with those media, anything associated with General Electric, it's not being made by that CEO. It's being made by the shareholders and the people, even in the shadows, the people we don't know the names of.
So there's no free press. There's no free press. I mean, there is. There's people like you, but alt-right.
Yeah. And and here's the next part is that as Christians, what we need to do now is we need to stop putting our money behind companies that fund the devil. And what I mean by that is, that's as blatant as I can be, is funding organizations that are literally lying to people and keeping them in the dark and creating this division within our country, where you have people like myself, an independent journalist, and many others who have helped me wake up to the truth of what's going on, we're demonized as being conspiracy theorists or being, I don't think I've been labeled that officially yet. I'm trying to just provide objectivity in my reporting, but the idea that we're providing misinformation to people.
Yeah.
I just watched MSNBC and CNN clips just this past week where you had Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow and a bunch of others talking about how and on NPR as well, talking about how they're just tired of the misinformation that people are spreading about COVID, and just get that vaccine. And why can't you just comply? And I thought to myself, you've totally lost it, because at this point, if you're not willing to see that there's so many other options to treatment to keep people healthy and prevent them from even getting into the hospital in the first place. And that's where, to me, the media is completely complicit in
Yeah,
crimes against humanity.
I
Because
agree.
when
I
we
agree.
withhold actual truthful information from the public, okay, that is a crime. If you are only telling somebody the only way they can stay healthy is if they inject themselves with an experimental medicine that, when it was tested on ferrets, every single ferret died,
Right.
and you're telling them that they have to have it or else they're going to lose their job, you know, and the mindset is, if you don't have it, then you are a threat to society. You are despicable, and you don't care about people. It's a dangerous mindset straight out of the communist playbook,
It
and
is.
we can't let them win.
My wife and I have been, researching all of this stuff for the last several months. I don't think we really woke up to it to about May or so. It was
Mm-hmm.
probably April or May, when my, it was being told to us that my daughter might not be able to participate in band camp overnight if she wasn't vaccinated, and
Yeah.
that started our whole, and in prayer. We were praying. And I had a friend, a sister in Christ, send us a video of Dr. Simone Gold.
Yeah, she's
And
amazing.
and I'd seen America's Frontline Doctors last year. I remember that when they did the white
Mm-hmm.
coat,
Yep, Summit.
yeah, in DC, and they got ridiculed so fast. But it was all of these things, seeing this, like, what is going on here? All of this censorship. There's no debate.
Yep.
They've decided who the experts are.
Yep.
Fauci is the final word on everything. The NIH,
Right.
all the stuff that's coming out about that now.
Yeah,
Um,
and we know that he allowed that gain of
yeah,
function. We have the data,
yes,
we have the evidence, and yet why he isn't behind bars right now is beyond me. He, in my opinion, for anybody to lose their moral compass so much to where you want to purposely, and I mean, I've studied this ad nauseum. I've interviewed multiple scientists that are familiar with him and his work, and read books that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has published. Which, by the
yeah,
way,
he's been
please,
fantastic.
for your audience, please go to children'shealthdefense.org. They're heavily censored, so you have to go to their website to get the information. But I'm telling you, that's the only beacon of hope besides America's Frontline Doctors that is really trying to get the truth to the public right now. And to your point regarding uh you know just seeing what were saying, the censorship, and then you know the idolization of
Yes,
Dr. Fauci,
yes,
who I don't know how you can even continue to keep bringing him on your news show when he's flip-flopped so many times that he has the nickname Flip-Flop Fauci.
yeah.
How can you trust a thing he says?
And then how did we end up giving an organization like the CDC the power that it has to just determine our
Yeah.
lives? What happened to the Constitution's been thrown out the window.
Yeah.
They're just stepping
Well,
right over it.
and John, that's a really great point. I think we all need to do some internal digging here, soul searching and repentance for the fact
Mhm.
that we've been asleep for
Yeah,
too long. We've been very comfortable in our life, in our lives and our lifestyle, and it caused us to not pay attention to what was actually really happening in government. And I
yeah,
think that one blessing that we can really pull out of this whole experience, as hard and difficult and uncomfortable as it is to come to the opportunity where you're actually awake to what's happening.
yeah.
Here's the good thing, though, is that because this is happening, it's causing people to start to question the narrative, start to question, why is this going on? When it impacts your life and your children, that's a huge
Yes.
wet red pill, right? That you're just like, okay, wait a second. And so what it's doing now is creating a national momentum for people to affect change. And we're seeing it happen every day with parents going to school boards and complaining about critical race theory. Who knew that they had been indoctrinating our children since the early, I would say, mid 2000s is when they started critical race theory in schools, and it went right underneath our radar without us realizing it. And so we're guilty of being asleep for too long, but the church is waking up, and I pray more and more continue, but we have a long ways to go, because one of the things that I think is important to note here is that many people grew up, if you were a faith-filled person going to church, with an understanding that we should never talk politics and it's evil to get involved with government. Just let the politicians do their thing, and the church just focus on the church and on loving people and spreading the good news about Jesus. And yes, that's true. But here's the problem, is that God wants his people to be the ones to affect change in his world. Thy kingdom come. Well, we can't bring his kingdom if we're not involved in any aspect of the political realm. And it's, coming on the other side of this, of whistleblowing and being introduced to so many politicians and understanding the inside of how a lot of this stuff works. Yeah, it's not fun. It's not pretty. People have their own, power struggles and things like that. But we have got to do something, even if it's something as little as going to a school board meeting. Many people have never gone to a school board meeting before. Expressing the fact that your children are your children, not the government's and not anybody else's. And so I think parents really need to get that backbone to say, I am no longer going to subject my children to any more of this unconstitutional abuse. And in my opinion, it's child abuse to mask a child, when we know that there are multiple studies showing that children wearing masks, actually, it's more detrimental to their health than it would be for them to not wear it. So why are we still doing it and enforcing it? And if you're a parent listening today and you're also frustrated about it, it's not good enough to be frustrated. You have to actually do something about it. And maybe that means you pull your kid out of the school. You have to do the hard things. When we look back at what happened in our history, in our country, when our country was founded and they were, in the middle of fighting against England and the tyranny that was coming from King George, they had to do hard things. And this is a time for us in America where it's going to take sacrifice if you want to preserve any sort of freedom for your children and your children's children.
I think, if people read the Declaration of Independence and read the list of grievances that the founding fathers had listed in there against England, I think you'd find out that their grievances were much less than what we have now.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, bringing up the church, myself included, we need to wake up. And I think there is this belief that we don't get involved in politics, but I think it was Charlie Kirk who recently said that what Jesus didn't have things to say about, marriage and sexuality and all of these things, that everything is politics now. Everything. And if the church doesn't step into it, it's already in your door. It's coming in here. It's going to take us down. And I believe that, when Jesus gave the Great Commission and he said, all authority has been given to me on earth, in heaven, as on and on earth. God uses his people to enforce his justice in the world. And we're not doing it. We're staying safe in our four walls, and just in while the whole world around us, and I believe God helped create. There's no way that this country was founded in the way it was. Was it perfect? No, but it was Christian values and Judeo-Christian values that helped. We got past slavery. We got past all these things. We went into this postmodern world where there's no truth and everything goes. And now you've got this complete chaos. Church, we need to speak into this.
Yeah. And also, just to call the pastors listening today, don't be afraid to, not that you need to, completely talk politics every weekend from the podium, but just talking about one of my favorite scripture verses is that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. And if we don't have the liberty to decide what gets injected into our own bodies,
Right.
then we've lost it. And it's the duty of the church, okay, because we have been founded on godly principles as a nation, we have that authority to stand on that ground and say, we are going to hold the line, so to speak, as a lot of Christian people are speaking out right now and saying, like, we need to hold the line as Christians and say, this is not acceptable. And we're not going to be the popular people, as far as it goes with culture. Okay. Because we're warring against a culture that is satanic. I mean, you can't, in the last 9 months, I have not seen one, pop star or somebody who has been an influencer for like little kids who there's so many of them are coming out as bisexual or transgender, or Converse just released an ad with people dressed very demonically with pentagrams in their mouths and things like that. This is a full-on assault by the devil on our children, and Christians, I feel like a lot of them are just, they're just, well, they're
I
not
know.
doing anything
I
about
know.
it. And to the point that when Black Lives Matter became a big issue last summer after the death of George Floyd, you know, so many Christians jumped on board
Yeah.
to put on social media their little black square, uh, in support of Black lives. But what they didn't understand is that Black Lives Matter is a Marxist,
Yep.
communistic, organization that is only seeking to divide and could care less about Black lives. If they did, they
Yeah.
would be storming all the Planned Parenthoods in all of the inner cities
Right.
that prey on African American women. And
Right.
so that I was outraged. And back to media being involved in this kind of stuff. When you go to journalism school, you always learn you need to stay objective, and the best reporter is somebody who you'll never know what side that they're on, because they just report a balanced piece of information. And so I just felt like, working at CBS, well, that's how all media industries should be, is that we don't take a political side. We're here to
Right.
disseminate information and allow the reader or viewer, the audience, to decide for themselves. Okay. But when George Floyd's death happened, Viacom CBS sent out an email to all of its employees internally and said, we are going to start partnering with Black Lives Matter, the organization, the NAACP, and I believe one other organization that I can't remember right now. And then my general manager, Brian Watson, ended up coming out and saying, in an email, that he was echoing another employee from the station who had said, we really want all of our employees at CBS, and this is international, okay? This isn't just Michigan,
Yeah.
to do whatever they can to promote Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that is a huge line you never cross. First of all, George Floyd had only been dead like less than 2 days. We don't know the full story behind what happened. We're only seeing snippets. From a journalistic standpoint, I couldn't believe that a media organization was doing this and pushing this agenda. And so, now we understand and know that this is all part of the media's plan to push a far left agenda that doesn't really align with the American people, and they want you to think that we're the minority. But I can tell you from attending these events, the Reawaken America tour and CPAC and Freedom Fest and all of these events around the country, just in the last 2 months since my story has gone public, the amount of people who are freedom loving, good people, they're not white supremacists. They're not trying to hurt anybody. We just want to have the country that we love, and to hold traditional values.
Right.
I think the church too is realizing how important, when we've always known biblically that family is so important. And of course, that's the thing that Satan wants to attack the most, is attacking the family. So I think that as Christians, we need to really be strong, and that means pastors need to grow a backbone and start, talking about difficult topics from the pulpit, and encouraging their attendees to be awake and aware of what's happening to the devil's schemes.
And that's the biggest thing right there, I think, is that they're not encouraging and or helping their flock apply what's about to happen. And I've been in way too many churches where this stuff isn't even talked about. And again, I think it's a gospel issue. It is. These are all gospel issues that need to be addressed. And again, I was listening to Charlie Kirk the other day, and he was talking to some other pastors out of California, and one of them said, "How is it?" Like, he was using California as the example, but I think it's everywhere. How is it that you have a church with 30,000 members, and right next door you've got a public elementary school that's doing story time, drag queen story time?
Yeah.
How does that happen? And then in our own community here, I'm hearing stories from other parents that their kids are being asked to put what their pronouns are, their preferred pronouns are on a card. So church, we need to wake up, and we need to get involved in the public square. You need to start going to our public or our board of education meetings.
Yeah.
We need to get involved, but also in the behind the pulpits, we need to be talking about how does God want us to live this out in his kingdom? And I think too many people think, well, you know what? I'm just waiting till I die, and then we go up to heaven, and we
I think they're going to be in for a very rude awakening, because the majority of people, because they're not paying attention to what's going on, they choose to say, oh, it's no big deal, I'll just wear that mask. That's okay. They're not seeing the bigger issue, is that when you comply with those little things, it has now opened the door for them to say, well, you've been complying all along with all of this. We want you to do this. And so, when you understand the communist playbook, this is, exactly, they're following it exactly in order of how they want things to go in order to take over a nation. And this was put in plan back in 1913. I don't know if many people understand that, but the communists of America, actually, in the early 1900s, put a plan in place to take over America. So you've got a lot of things working against us right now, but we also have God on our side. And I do believe that he hears the prayers of his people. And there are enough of us that are still left here that are crying out for him to bring justice. And, one thing I will say is, are you aware of Sean Fecht and what he's been doing with, so all over the country, he is a worship leader that during COVID, he's been going to all of really the most blue states you can possibly go to: Portland, Oregon, Chicago, Illinois. He's gone all across the country holding worship services. And all he wanted was for people to be able to come worship Jesus, and then receive him if they haven't received him yet as their Lord and Savior. They are getting healed. People are dropping their crutches on the stage. And Sean said, I had no idea this is what God wanted to do when I started this, but I understand now, I'm on mission to go to all of these broken cities, and begin to help people heal. People are throwing their suicide pills up on their needles, their syringes. They're being healed of drug addictions. There's a mass harvest happening right now all across our nation. And so that's exciting. But one thing that I will just say, is huge is that Sean Fecht brought his worship service one day to the very steps of a courthouse in Texas where the Roe v. Wade was officially put into law back in the 1970s. And they prayed that that would be reversed, that Roe v. Wade would be reversed. And just in this last week, we heard that there was this new bill that was signed into law that preserves babies once a detection of a heartbeat. So you cannot have an abortion after 6 weeks in the state of Texas.
Yep.
And that is huge. That is a direct example of God's people pleading and crying out for innocent lives. And now we're seeing that is beginning to take place. So I believe that is just the beginning of what we're going to continue to see God do, miraculous things over the next couple of months and years to continue to reveal himself to people. And I think that we're in a really exciting time to be alive. Certainly it's going to wake a lot more people up as we go on.
Praise God for you. So ultimately you were let go, and now you're doing this, and you're speaking out the truth. You're getting this out. So what are you doing now? Share with you. How can people find you?
Yeah, well, thanks, John. I really hope you guys go to my channel. I have a brand new show of my independent journalism, completely working independently here. So would love your support to subscribe to my channel. It's called Face the Facts with April Moss. I've already got a good amount of interviews uploaded there. You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, CloutHub, and Brighteon. And then I'm also on Telegram as April Moss TV. And that's also my same handle for Instagram and Facebook. Please follow me on my platforms. But God is so good. When CBS fired me for accusing them of discriminating against me, then fortunately, the doors were open for me to join an amazing network, and you all should go and subscribe to them. It's Real America's Voice, and you can find them at americasvoice.news. And so I'm on their network several times during the week, doing different reports ranging from issues at the southern border to the latest FDA bait and switch on the Pfizer vaccine, where the vaccine that they've been giving people is actually not the one that was FDA approved, and why that was it's so dangerous for people to think that it was approved when it wasn't. So again, I'm going to give you truthful content. I'm really counting down the days to see how much longer I'm going to be allowed to stay on YouTube, because I'm not afraid to speak the truth. So you'll definitely want to follow me on some of those alternative channels like Rumble and BitChute. But I would love to see you. Please tell me that you heard me, on this podcast, so that I know where you're coming from. And I want to tell you too, those of you parents who are frustrated with your school districts and are considering pulling your kids out of school, and maybe you've always wanted to homeschool, but that idea kind of scares you.
Yep.
I, as a homeschool mom for the last 8 years, my husband and I are actually going to be launching a 2-day workshop where we're going to be teaching you and equipping you with resources and just really getting the word out about anybody can do this. And trust me, if I can do it and run a business, and my husband's a business owner, anybody can do this. If you work part-time, if you work full-time, homeschooling is such a great way to educate your kids, and it's not as hard as you think. So I'm going to be putting up information, and John, I'll let you know as that gets closer.
Please do.
Yeah, that'll be a great one you'll want to subscribe to. I've got links too, promo codes where you guys can save like 30% off of products with using my code. And then that supports my independent journalism. So I appreciate you so much for having me on the show today.
No, thank you. And I've got a Board of Education meeting that we'll be attending in our community here. I think you're aware of, and I've got a group of about 170 parents that we're all together on this. And I don't know how many exactly are going to go, but I'm going to share this. I know you'll be a huge encouragement to them. So thank you for everything. I'd love to have you back on again in the future to see where you're at. And I'm following you, and I love the work you're doing. I thank you so much for speaking the truth, and praise God for you again, April. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your support. Really appreciate it. And God bless.